Dr. Deng, I apologize to interrupt, but here's my problem, is that I'm not that far from the Darfur border. I'm looking into the eyes of a 10-year-old child who was just released from slavery. And this child looks at me like I'm his latest master. I'm his latest slave owner because that's all he's known. And I hear people at the UN argue about this. I hear people at the United Nations talk about this. I hear people at the U.S. government talk about this. But all this little child knows is that he's a slave and nobody is doing anything about it. I'm angry about it. They're angry about it. Everybody's angry. But nobody is doing anything.
That is the dilemma. I mean, if you come to the Security Council, in most cases we thought that the end of the Cold War meant that we had gone beyond these ideological divisions and what have you. There are still situations where if you come to the Security Council, whichever country is targeted is likely to have some friend or ally or someone who would protect them. And therefore, in answer to your question, I think we have to continue to do what we are doing, try to improve it. We have to have the hybrid force at work. We have to persuade countries to actually empower or enable the hybrid force. But to me, in the end, the genuine protection of these kids you're talking about, and I'm very, very sympathetic to your reaction, and I have the same reaction. These are my people. The best reaction is try to do the best we can by improving the performance of hybrid force, but work on peace. And in working on peace, let us exert international pressure to bring peace about.
But wait a second, we talk about international pressure here. The one country who has the ability to stop any efforts, and has successfully done that, are the Chinese. The Chinese do this because they are vested in stopping anything from happening. They have an interest in oil. They have an interest in a whole series of things. And so as a result, that 10-year-old little boy that I look at, you know what? That kid's going to be a slave when he's 20, 30, 40, and 50. If we all sit back and talk about this and simply say, yes, it's tragic, we need to have more dialogue, yes, we need to have more peace, and my response is, yeah, I've heard that before. A lot of people have.
Well, you know, I use the word pressure, really thinking about the role the United States and partners like UK and Norway played in ending the war in the South. And I say that one of the areas where the war against terror succeeded was exactly that. Both parties did not want to antagonize the United States, did not want to alienate the powers that be, and therefore they bent over backwards to accommodate the peacemakers led by the United States. It worked then. Now, if we're talking about the situation now, where that kind of threat is not available, then the word pressure has to be replaced by the word persuasive intervention. In other words, persuade China, persuade others who are in the good books of Khartoum to recognize their responsibility.
How? Give me specifics. How do I persuade China, who's pumping X number amount of oil out of not even northern Sudan, but frankly right down into the southern Sudanese regions? How do we convince the Chinese to do what it is we say they should be doing?
Well, if we assume that the Chinese are the one who would have the leverage to make a difference, then the premise of what I'm saying rests on the fact that the Chinese are not just relying on the Sudan, not just on the oil of the Sudan. There are many other interests involved, including with the United States. And therefore, there is a way of making them recognize, see the positive, what can be done to deal with a situation that the world is shocked by. The negative is the risks of alienating others who would like to work together in order to end the crisis in Darfur and, frankly, the whole country. I think we ought not to see Darfur in isolation. We ought to see Darfur as the latest episode of a series of regional conflicts that have to do with, if there's one word that describes what's happening in Sudan, it's the marginalization of these groups in these regions. So I don't think we can just focus on one thing. You're absolutely right. The best we can to protect this kid, this child, the displaced populations in camps, but that we should indeed do the real solution will come by finding a comprehensive peace in Sudan.
Dr. Deng, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.